Sent you a mic.
Good. Exhausted.
You had a good space. I know that was like a few hours.
Oh no. It goes by like you're like, oh my god, I've been in here for hella long.
Right. Now, but you did good work. So, good wishes on that. I think educating is super important. So, good luck.
Yeah. He said, okay. He said good luck.
Yeah, no, for real. As you see, you're gonna deal with, what I mean, pushback. So you just gotta keep doing the work. What up, hey Boogie?
Hey, what's going on, family? How y'all doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. I kind of wanted today to go over the timeline of Reconstruction, starting with the meeting with Sherman, and then go to Special Field Order 15. From there, go to the Freedmen Bureau and Bank Act, which was signed on the same day, and then talk about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, all of which were ratified after the Freedmen Bank and Bureau were signed into law. And so I think it's important to correct the timeline because I think when we learn about it in like school, primarily public schools, we learn about the 13th, 14th Amendment. We don't learn about the Freedmen Bureau, and we don't learn about the Freedmen Bank, and we don't understand the context of Lincoln's assassination in that timeline because it's not clear. It's kind of mostly portrayed as Lincoln was assassinated for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. But when you realize they were passed years apart, ratified years apart, um, you get a better view of when it happened, why it happened, and then it all connects back to our freedmen, heritage and why it's so important. And so, yeah, I kind of want to just spend today just correcting any misconceptions and really just reading through each one and hopefully kind of putting everything in perspective. So, if you want, y'all can follow along and also make sure to tweet out the space, DM it out, um, and then if y'all want to follow along, I got the live stream in the jumbotron. Felicia, did you want to say something? Sorry, inspired.
Oh no, no, no. I was it was an accident.
No worries. Um, yeah, so let's get started. I think all of this will probably take the whole hour. I'm going to try to keep it to an hour, so I'm just going to get started and read through each one, starting with. Well, actually, let me start with the tab I'm on right now, which is the Freedmen policy page on our website. So let me scroll down. So one of the important definitions of reparation is defined by the United Nations, and a key part of that definition is who qualifies for reparations. Defined by the UN, here's what's the important takeaway. Victims are persons who individually or collectively suffered harm. The term victim also includes the immediate family or dependents of the direct victim. So, the only people who qualify for reparations are the people who actually are the people who experienced the harm or their descendants, right? Now, why is that important? Let's scroll down. Okay, so promised land, right? Whenever you have a promised land, you got to ask the question, who was it promised to? And we have two clear documents that define who the 40 acres, our promised land as freedmen, were actually defined for. So, Special Field Order 15 has part of it. This was signed by General Sherman and done through an executive order. It says each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves. And then, by the way, the Special Field Order 15 was signed in January. It was executed in January. In March 3rd, 1865, you had the Freedmen's Bureau Act, which also specified our promised land of 40 acres based on Special Field Order 15, right? So here's what it said: Freedmen shall be assigned not more than 40 acres, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land, right? Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to the context of the meeting with Sherman and the 20 freedmen that really spurred not only Special Field Order 15, but it also spurred the Freedmen Bureau Act and the Freedmen Bank Act. So let's go through that. Let me switch tabs really quickly. Okay. So this is the meeting with Sherman, right? Newspaper account of a meeting between black religious leaders and Union military authorities. So this was published in New York, February 13, 1865, but it actually comes from the minutes of the actual meeting with the 20 freedmen. So here's minutes of an interview between the colored ministers and church officers at Savannah with the Secretary of War and Major General Sherman. Headquarters of Major General Sherman, City of Savannah, Georgia, January 12, 1865 at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right? On the evening of Thursday, the 12th day of January, 1865, the following persons of African descent met by appointment to hold an interview with Edwin M. Stanton, Secretary of War, and Major General Sherman to have a conference upon matters relating to the freedmen of the state of Georgia, to wit. Now, here are the 20 freedmen and their background. And pay attention to um, not only who they are, pay attention to where they're from, pay attention to their age, and pay attention to whether they were born in slavery or were born free. And then if there's a dollar amount mentioned, pay attention to the dollar amount, because $1,000 in 1857, when Garrison Frazier was emancipated, when he paid his slave owner $1,000 to free himself and his wife, that is the modern day equivalent of $75 million. So if you see 1,000, think, 75 million. If you see, 20,000, multiply that factor and think about how many millions or billions that is. So, okay, let's start with the first one. William J. Campbell, aged 51 years, born in Savannah, slave until 1849, and then liberated by will of his mistress, Miss May Maxwell. For 10 years, pastor of First Baptist Church of Savannah, numbering 1,800 members. Average congregation 1,900. The church property belonging to the congregation, trustees white, worth $18,000. So if you want to think about 18 times 75 million, you could think of like 18 times like 100 million as like a reference. It's a little less than like $1 billion when you multiply that out, right? Two, John Cox, aged 58 years, born in Savannah, slave until 1849, when he bought his freedom for $1,100. So that means the modern day equivalent of $75 million or more, right? Pastor of the Second African Baptist Church, in the ministry 15 years, congregation 1,222 persons, church property worth 10,000 belonging to the congregation. So if 1,000 is 75 million, and the congregation spent 10,000, that's about $750 million in today's money, right? Three, Ulysses L. Houston, age 41 years, born in Grahamsville, South Carolina, slave until the Union Army entered Savannah, owned by Moses Henderson, Savannah, and pastor of Third African Baptist Church, congregation numbering 400, church property worth 5,000. So 5 times like 75 million. If you want to do a rough approximation and just do 5 times 100 million, it's a little bit less than $500 million, right? In terms of how much they spent in today's modern day money. In the ministry, about 8 years. 4. William Bentley, age 72 years, born in Savannah, slave until 25 years of age, when his master, John Waters, emancipated him by will. Pastor of Andrews Chapel, Methodist Episcopal Church, only one of that denomination in Savannah. Congregation numbering 360 members, church property worth about $20,000. Again, so this is closer to $1 billion, right? And is owned by the congregation, been in the ministry about 20 years, a member of Georgia Conference. 5. Charles Bradwell, age 40 years, born in Liberty County, Georgia, slave until 1851, emancipated by will of his master, J.L. Bradwell, local preacher in charge of Methodist Episcopal Congregation, Andrews Chapel, in the absence of the minister, in the ministry 10 years. 6. William Gaines, age 41 years, born in Willis County, Georgia, slave until the Union forces freed me, owned by Robert Toombs, formerly United States Senator, and his brother Gabriel Toombs, local preacher of basically AME, Methodist Episcopal Church, Andrews Chapel, in the ministry 16 years. 7. James Hill, age 52 years, born in Bryan County, Georgia, slave up to the time the Union Army came in, owned by H.F. Willings of Savannah, in the ministry 16 years. 8. Glaston Taylor, age 72 years, born in Wilkes County, Georgia, slave until the Union Army came, owned by A.P. Wetter, is a local preacher of M.E. Church, Andrews Chapel, in the ministry 35 years. 9. Garrison Frazier, age 67 years, born in Granville County, North Carolina, slave until 8 years ago when he bought himself and wife paying $1,000 in gold and silver, is an ordained minister in the Baptist Church, but his health failing, has now charge of no congregation, has been in the ministry 35 years. 10. James Mills, age 56 years, born in Savannah Free, born, and is a licensed preacher of the First Baptist Church, has been in 8 years in the ministry. 11. Abraham Burke, age 48 years, born in Bryan County, Georgia, slave until 20 years ago, when he bought himself for $800, has been in the ministry 10 years. So 800 is, a little bit 20% down from 100, right? So if you try to take off like 20% from 75 million, it's like somewhere between like 50 and like 60 million, something like that, right? So still a lot of money in today's terms. 12. Arthur Wardell, age 44 years, born in Liberty County, Georgia, slave until freed by a Union Army, owned by A.A. Solomon Savannah, and is a licensed minister in the Baptist Church, has been in the ministry 6 years. 13. Alexander Harris, age 47, born in Savannah, freeborn, licensed minister of Third African Baptist Church, licensed about 1 month ago. 14. Andrew Neal, age 61 years, born in Savannah, slave until the Union Army liberated him, owned by Mr. W. M. Gibbons, and has been deacon in the Third Baptist Church for 10 years. 15. Jas Porter, age 39 years, born in Charleston, South Carolina, freeborn, his mother having purchased her freedom, is a lay reader and president of the Board of Wardens and vestry of St. Stephen's Protestant Episcopal Colored Church in Savannah, has been in communion 9 years. The congregation numbers about 200 persons. The church property is worth about $10,000 and is owned by the congregation. So 10,000 in today's money would be about 750 million. 16. Adolphus Monte, age 28 years, born in Savannah, freeborn, is a licensed minister of the Missionary Baptist Church of Milledgeville. Congregation numbering about 300 or 400 persons, has been in the ministry about 2 years. 17. Jacob Godfrey, age 57 years, born in Marion, South Carolina, slave until the Union Army freed me, owned by James E. Godfrey, Methodist preacher now in the rebel army, is a class leader and steward of Andrews Chapel since 1836. 18. John Johnson, age 51 years, born in Bryan County, Georgia, slave up to the time the Union Army came here, owned by W. W. Lincoln of Savannah, is class leader and treasurer of Andrews Chapel for 16 years. 19. Robert N. Taylor, age 51 years, born in Wilkes County, Georgia, slave to the time the Union Army came, was owned by Augustus P. Welter, Savannah, and is class leader in Andrews Chapel for 9 years. 20. Jas Lynch, age 26 years, born in Baltimore, Maryland, freeborn, is presiding elder of ME Church and missionary to the Department of the South, has been 7 years in the ministry and 2 years in the South. Garrison Frazier, being chosen by the persons present to express their common sentiments upon the matters of inquiry, makes answers to inquiries as follows. First, state what your understanding is in regard to the acts of Congress and President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation touching the condition of the colored people in the rebel states. Answer. So far as I understand, President Lincoln's proclamation to the rebellious states, it is that if they would lay down their arms and submit to the laws of the United States before the 1st of January, 1863, all should be well. But if they did not, then all the slaves in the rebel states should be free henceforth and forever. That is what I understood. Second, state what you understand by slavery and the freedom that was to be given by the President's proclamation. Answer. Slavery is receiving by irresistible power the work of another man and not by his consent. The freedom, as I understand it, promised by the proclamation, is taking us from under the yoke of bondage and placing us where we could reap the fruit of our own labor, take care of ourselves, and assist the government in maintaining our freedom. Third, state in what manner you think you can take care of yourselves and how you can best assist the government in maintaining your freedom. The way we best can take care of ourselves is to have land and turn it and till it by our own labor, that is, by the labor of the women and children and old men, and we can soon maintain ourselves and have something to spare. And to assist the government, the young men should enlist in the service of the government and serve in such manner as they may be wanted. The rebels told us they piled them up and made batteries of them and sold them to Cuba, but we don't believe that. We want to be placed on land until we are able to buy it and make it our own. Fourth, state in what manner you would rather live, whether scattered among the whites or in colonies by yourselves. Answer. I would prefer to live by ourselves, for there is prejudice against us in the South that will take years to get over. But I do not know that I can answer for my brethren. Mr. Lynch says he thinks they should not be separated, but live together. All the other persons present, being questioned one by one, answer that they agree with Brother Frazier. So 1 out of 20 disagreed with Frazier. Fifth, do you think there is intelligence enough among the slaves of the South to maintain themselves under the government of the United States and the equal protection of its laws and maintain good and peaceable relations among yourselves and with your neighbors? Answer. I think there is sufficient intelligence among us to do so. 6. State what is the feeling of the black population of the South toward the government of the United States. Sorry. Let me scroll back up. State what is the feeling of the black population of the South toward the government of the United States. What is the understanding in respect to the present war, its causes, object, and their disposition to aid either side. State fully your views. Answer. I think you will find there are thousands that are willing to make any sacrifice to assist the government of the United States, while there are also many that are not willing to take up arms. I do not suppose there are a dozen men that are opposed to the government. I understand as to the war that the South is the aggressor. President Lincoln was elected president by a majority of the United States, which guaranteed him the right of holding the office and exercising that right over the whole United States. The South, without knowing what he would do, rebelled. The war was commenced by the rebels before he came into office. The object of the war was not at first to give the slaves their freedom, but the sole object of the war was at first to bring the rebellious states back into the Union and their loyalty to the laws of the United States. Afterward, knowing the value set on the slaves by the rebels, the president thought that his proclamation would stimulate them to lay down their arms, reduce them to obedience, and help to bring back the rebel states, and their not doing so has now made the freedom of the slaves a part of the war. It is my opinion that there is not a man in this city that could be started to help the rebels 1 inch, for that would be suicide. There were two black men left with the rebels because they had taken an active part for the rebels and thought something might befall them if they stayed behind. But there is not another man. If the prayers that have gone up for the Union Army could be read out, you would not get through them these 2 weeks. Seventh, state whether the sentiments you now express are those only of the colored people in the city, or do they extend to the colored population throughout the country? And what are your means of knowing the sentiments of those living in the country? Answer. I think the sentiments are the same among the colored people of the state. My opinion is formed by personal communication in the course of my ministry, and also from the thousand that followed the Union Army, leaving their homes and undergoing suffering. I did not think there would be so many. The number surpassed my expectation. Eighth, if the rebel leaders were to arm the slaves, what would be its effect? Answer. I think they would fight as long as they were before the bayonet, and just as soon as they could get away, they would desert, in my opinion. Ninth, what, in your opinion, is the feeling of the colored people about enlisting and serving as soldiers of the United States, and what kind of military service do they prefer? Answer. A large number have gone as soldiers to Port Royal, South Carolina, to be drilled and put in the service, and I think there are thousands of young men that would enlist. There is something about them that perhaps is wrong. They have suffered so long for the rebels that they want to shoulder the musket. Others want to go into the quartermaster's or commissary service. 10th, do you understand the mode of enlistments of colored persons in the rebel states by state agents under the Act of Congress? If yes, state what your understanding is. Answer. My understanding is that the colored persons enlisted by state agents are enlisted as substitutes and give credit to the states and do not swell the army because every black man enlisted by a state agent leaves a white man at home, and also that larger bounties are given or promised by state agents than are given by the states. The great object should be to push through this rebellion the shortest way, and there seems to be something wanting in the enlistment of state agents, for it don't strengthen the army, but takes one away for every colored man enlisted. 11th, state what, in your opinion, is the best way to enlist colored men for soldiers. Answer. I think, sir, that all compulsory operations should be put a stop to. The minister would talk to them, and the young men would enlist. It is my opinion that it would be far greater for the state agents to stay at home and the enlistments to be made for the United States under the direction of General Sherman. In the absence of General Sherman, the following question was asked. 12th, last question. State what is the feeling of the colored people in regard to General Sherman, and how far do you regard his sentiments and actions as friendly to their rights and interests or otherwise? Answer. We looked upon General Sherman prior to his arrival as a man in the providence of God, specially set apart to accomplish this work, and we unanimously feel inexpressible gratitude to him, looking upon him as a man that should be honored for the faithful performance of his duty. Some of us called upon him immediately upon his arrival, and it is probable he would not meet the secretary with more courtesy than he met us. His conduct and deportment toward us characterize him as a friend and a gentleman. We have confidence in General Sherman and think that what concerns us could not be under better hands. This is our opinion now from the short acquaintance and entrance we have had. Mr. Lynch states that with his limited acquaintance with General Sherman, he is unwilling to express an opinion. All others present declare their agreement with Mr. Fraser about General Sherman. So that's the meeting with General Sherman. Next, we're going to read the Special Field Order 15 and go through how the meeting on January 12th turned into Special Field Order 15. So let's read that. How you doing, Amaru? Okay, so this is Special Field Order 15. So this was January 16th. So 4 days after January 12th, the meeting with Sherman. 4 days later, Special Field Order 15 was issued. Right. Order by the commander of the Military Division of the Mississippi in the field, Savannah, Georgia, January 16th, 1865. Special Field Orders number 15. The island, excuse me, the island from Charleston south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. 2. At Beaufort, Hilton Head, Savannah, Fernandina, St. Augustine, and Jacksonville, the blacks may remain in their chosen or accustomed vocations, but on the island and in the settlements hereafter to be established, no white person whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty, will be permitted to reside, and the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves, subject only to the United States military authority and the acts of Congress. By the laws of war and orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. He cannot be subjected to conscription or forced military service, save by the written orders of the highest military authority of the department, under such regulations as the President or Congress may prescribe. Domestic servants, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other mechanics will be free to select their own work and residence, but the young and able bodied Negroes must be encouraged to enlist as soldiers in the service of the United States to contribute their share towards maintaining their own freedom and securing their rights as citizens of the United States. Negroes so enlisted will be organized into companies, battalions, and regiments under the orders of the United States military authorities and will be paid, fed, and clothed according to law. The bounties paid on enlistment may, with the of the recruit, go to assist his family and settlement in procuring agricultural implements, seed, tools, boots. Hey, pulling you up by your own bootstrap, right? They were going to give us boots, clothing, and, and other articles necessary for their livelihood. 3. Now here's where the 40 acres comes in. Whenever there, Whenever three respectable Negroes, heads of families, shall desire to settle on land and shall have selected for that purpose an island or a locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself or by such subordinate officer as he may appoint give them a license to settle such island or district and afford them such assistance as he can to enable them to establish a peaceable agricultural settlement. The three parties named will subdivide the land under the supervision of the inspector among themselves and such others as may choose to settle near them, such that each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and when it borders on some water channel, will not more than 800 feet waterfront, in the possession of which land the military authorities will afford them protection until such time as they can protect themselves, or until Congress shall regulate their title. The quartermaster may, on the requisition of the inspector of settlements and plantations, place at the disposal of the inspector one or more of the captured steamers to ply between the settlements and one or more of the commercial points heretofore named in orders, to afford the settlers the opportunity to supply their necessary wants and to sell the products of their land and labor. So 40 acres, a mule, and a steamboat. Okay. 4. Whenever an Eagle has enlisted in the military service of the United States, he may locate his family in any of the settlements at pleasure and acquire a homestead and all other rights and privileges of a settler, as though present in person. In like manner, Negroes may settle their families and engage on board in gunboats, or in fishing, or in navigation of the inland waters, without losing any claim to land or other advantages derived from this system. But no one, unless an actual settler as above defined, or unless absent on government service, will be entitled to claim any right to land or property in any settlement by virtue of these orders. 6. Brigadier General R. Saxton is hereby appointed Inspector of Settlements and Plantations and will at once enter on the performance of his duties. No change is intended or desired in the settlement now on Beaufort, Port Royal Island, nor will any rights to property heretofore acquired be affected thereby. By order of Major General W.T. Sherman. So that's Special Field Order 15. And we read also the meeting. Next, we're going to read the Freedmen Bureau Act. Now, what's important about the Freedmen Bureau Act is it was an act of Congress, a legislative branch act that was then signed into law by the president, right? Excuse me. So, whereas the Special Field Order 15 was only an executive order that ultimately, unfortunately, was undone, the Freedmen Bureau Act was an act of Congress and so the legislative branch and the executive branch, right? Because it was signed by the president. So, law creating the Freedmen's Bureau. An act to establish a bureau for the relief of freedmen and refugees. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled that there is hereby established in the War Department to continue during the present war of rebellion and for 1 year thereafter, which was the trick bag, right? A Bureau of Refugees, Freedmen, and Abandoned Lands, to which shall be committed, as hereinafter provided, the supervision and management of all abandoned lands, and the control of all subjects relating to refugees and freedmen from rebel states, or from any district of country within the territory embraced in the operations of the Army, under such rules and regulations as may be prescribed by the head of the Bureau and approved by the President. The said bureau shall be under the management and control of a commissioner to be appointed by the President, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, whose compensation shall be $300 per annum, and such number of clerks as may be assigned to him by the Secretary of War, not exceeding one chief clerk, two of the fourth class, two of the third class, and five of the first class side. Now, here's something interesting. This is $300 in 1865. From the Compensated Emancipation Act, we know that $300 in 1862 was the equivalent of $15 million. So this person was getting paid a little less than $15 million a year in their salary in today's money. Uh, and just like the 15 departments and the cabinet of the White House, this is confirmed by the president and confirmed by the or nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, just like every other department um, that is part of the cabinet, the executive cabinet. Okay, let's continue. And the commissioner and all persons appointed under this act shall before entering upon their duties take the oath of office prescribed in an act entitled an act to prescribe an oath of office and for other purposes, approved July 2nd, 1862, and the commissioner and the chief clerk shall, before entering upon their duties, give bonds to the treasurer of the United States, the former in the sum of $50,000 and the latter in the sum of $10,000, conditioned for the faithful discharge of their duties, respectively, with securities to be approved as sufficient by the Attorney General, which bond shall be filled in the office of the first Comptroller of the Treasury, to be by him put in suit for the benefit of any injured party upon any breach of the conditions thereof. Excuse me. So $15,000 and $10,000. So again, $10,000 is the modern day equivalent of 750 million, and 15,000 would be basically 750 million plus like half of that is like what, 34. So basically $1 billion. Section 2. And be it further enacted that the Secretary of War may direct such issues of provisions excuse me, um, issues of provisions, clothing and fuel, as he may deem needful for the immediate and temporary shelter and supply of destitute and suffering refugees and freedmen and their wives and children under such rules and regulations as he may direct. Section 3. And be it further enacted that the President may, by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, appoint an assistant commissioner for each of the states declared to be an insurrection, not exceeding 10 in number, who shall, under the direction of the commissioner, aid in the execution of the provisions of this act, and shall give a bond to the Treasury of the United States in the sum of $20,000 in the form and manner prescribed in the first section of this act. So, if $1,000 is 75 million and 10,000 is 750 million, um, you know, 20,000 is basically 1.4 billion. Okay. Each of said commissioners shall receive an annual salary of $2,500 and full compensation for all of his services. So 2,500 is 2.5 times 1,000, right? And if 1,000 is 75 million, then their salaries is the modern day equivalent of about 140 million plus. Okay. And any military officer may be detailed and assigned to duty under this act without increase of pay or allowances. The commissioner shall, before the commencement of each regular session of Congress, make full report of his proceedings with exhibits of the state of his accounts to the president, who shall communicate the same to Congress, and shall also make special reports whenever required to do so by the president or either house of Congress. And the assistant commissioners shall make quarterly reports of their proceedings to the commissioner, and also such other special reports as from time to time may be required. The last two sections, Section 4 and Section 5. Section 4. And be it further enacted, so here's where the 40 acres come in, that the commissioner, under the direction of the president, shall have authority to set apart for the use of loyal refugees and freedmen such tracts of land within the insurrectionary states as shall have been abandoned, or to which the United States shall have acquired title by confiscation or sale, or otherwise, and to every male citizen, whether refugee or freedman, as aforesaid, there shall be assigned not more than 40 acres of such land, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use and enjoyment of the land for the term of 3 years at an annual rent not exceeding 6% upon the value of such land, as it was appraised by the state authorities in the year 1860 for the purpose of taxation. And in case no such appraisal can be found, then the rental shall be based upon the estimated value of the land in said year, to be ascertained in such manner as the commissioner may be regulation. In case no such appraisal can be found. As it was appraised by the state such authorities in the year 1800. Based upon the estimated value of the land in said year, to be ascertained in such manner as the commissioner may be regulation prescribed. Okay, yeah, it is just a weird sentence. At the end of the said term, or at any time during said term, the occupants of any parcel so assigned may purchase the land and receive such title thereto as the United States can convey, upon paying therefore the value of the land as ascertained and fixed for the purpose of determining the annual rate aforesaid. Section 5, and be it further enacted that all acts and parts of acts inconsistent with the provisions of this act are hereby repealed. Approved March 3rd, 1865. Okay, so again, in terms of timeline, the 13th Amendment was signed by the president um, in 1865, but it wasn't ratified until December, uh, I believe December 3rd or 6th. I'm forgetting which one. 1865. Actually, it was 6. Um, and so on this timeline so far, we have the Special Field Order 15, January 12th. Sorry, the meeting with Sherman on January 12th. Then Special Field Order 15 on January 16th. Then we have the Freedmen Bureau Act on March 3rd, 1865. And we also have the Freedmen Bank Act, which we're going to go over next, that was done on March 3rd, 1865, right? So 5 weeks later, after March 3rd, 1865, Lincoln is assassinated. Without the 13th Amendment being ratified, without the 14th Amendment being ratified, and without the 15th Amendment being ratified. Not even the 14th and 15th Amendment were even passed or signed into law at this point, right? So he was killed for the Freedmen Bureau and the Freedmen Bank Act. That's the main point. Okay, let's see. Oh, actually, I wanted to kind of reference this really quickly. So this is the Compensated Emancipation Act, which I was referencing in terms of that $300. That's 15 million today, and some of the salaries or some of the amount of money that was being paid is the modern day equivalent. Okay, let's go on to Freedmen Reconstruction. So here's the main takeaways from this, and we got three things left: the Freedmen Bank, the Juneteenth Proclamation, and the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. So I'm actually going to do the Juneteenth Proclamation really quickly, just because it's a little shorter, and then I'll get back to the bank just to make it simpler. Okay, let's see. Give me 1 second. What's important about this again is how reparations are defined. Who are the victims? Who are their descendants? So far, we've read again, all of these acts refer to freedmen. So let's read the Juneteenth Proclamation. So we know we have a national holiday on Juneteenth. I believe freedmen, we need to create a holiday for March 3rd, 1865. That could be Freedmen Day. And even if we don't make that our priority right now in terms of it's just symbolic, I think on the path to getting our reparations or after we get our reparations, we do need to make March 3rd, 1865 a holiday um, in terms of the Freedmen Bureau and Bank being passed that on the same day. Okay, so here's the Juneteenth Proclamation. The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation of the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves, excuse me, this involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Okay, so that's the Juneteenth Proclamation. So all of these, again, You got January 12th, January 16th. You got March 3rd, 1865. You got June 19th, 1865. The next thing that happens is the 13th, 14th Amendment. So before we get into that, let's actually at least briefly go through the Freedmen Bank Act because it is important. Um, an act to incorporate the Freedmen Savings and Trust Company. Again, another act of Congress, right? I'm gonna read through the important parts in terms of like who it's for. Um, like basically, whenever they mention slave, that's the main keyword. They mention slave and their descendants in this one. Excuse me. Scroll up. Okay. So this is section 5. And be it further enacted that the general business and object of the corporation hereby created shall be to receive on deposit such sums of money as may be. Oh my goodness, sorry. um, Little lag. Come on. Sorry, it's a little slaggy. Um, come on. Basically, got these. I'm gonna read through these two quotes, and then I'll go to the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Okay, sorry. And Section 5. And be it further enacted that the general business and object of the corporation hereby created shall be to receive on deposit such sums of money as may be from time to time be offered therefore by or on behalf of persons hereby held in slavery in the United States or their descendants, and investing the same in stocks, bonds, treasury notes, and other securities of the United States. Right? So who was it for? People held in slavery or their descendants. And this is called the Freedmen Bank Act, right? So it's clear who it's for. Now let's read the last part where it talks about um, slaves. And then we'll, like I said, we'll go to the 13th, 14th, and 15th. Okay, let's see. Damn, this shit's slow. I guess because it's a PDF. Wait, did I pass it? I'm looking for the second mention of slaves so I can point it out. So they make it very clear who the bank is for. Which, if you know about what happened last year with Kamala Harris and Janet Yellen talking about the Freedmen Bank is for all these other people, it's kind of a shame. Okay, here it goes. I keep scrolling past this. All right. Wait, let's go past it. Jeez, guys. Hey, trying to skip to the highlight. Okay, that's number one. There's number two. Okay, here we go. Section 11. Oh, come on. Sorry, I hit the button twice. Okay, section 11 is the last part that we're going to go over. Okay, section 11. And be it further enacted that in the case of the death of any depositor, whose deposit shall not be held upon any trust created pursuant to the provisions hereinbefore contained, or where it may prove impossible to execute such trust, it shall be the duty of the corporation to make diligent efforts to ascertain and discover whether such deceased depositor has left a husband, wife, or children surviving, and the corporation shall keep a record of the efforts so made and of the results thereof, and in case no person lawfully entitled thereto shall be discovered, or shall appear, or claim the funds remaining to the credit of such depositor before the expiration of 2 years from the death of such depositor, it shall be lawful for the corporation to hold and invest such funds as a separate trust fund, to be applied with the accumulations therefore to the education and improvement of persons heretofore held in slavery, or their descendants, being inhabitants of the United States, in such manner and through such agencies as the Board of Trustees shall deem best calculated to effect that object, provided that if any depositor be not heard from within 5 years from the date of his last deposit, the trustees shall advertise the same person in some paper of general circulation in the state where the principal office of the company is established, and also in the state where the depositor was last heard from. And if within 2 years thereafter such depositor shall not appear, nor a husband, wife, or child of such depositor to claim his deposit, they shall be used by the Board of Trustees as herebefore provided for in this section. Okay, so the important part about reading that is kind of what we need to improve on this second go around in terms of making these foolproof, and not able to be kind of like, you know, messed up by any one person. Okay, so here's the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Um, so Congress passed the 13th Amendment on January 31st, 1865, and it wasn't ratified until December 6th, 1865. So let's rethink our timeline. Special Field Order 15, meeting with Sherman, January 12th. Special Field Order 15, January 16th. 13th Amendment passed and signed into law, but not ratified, January 31st. Freedmen Bureau and Bank signed into law, March 3rd, 1865. Lincoln is assassinated 5 weeks later, and then December 6th, 1865, you get the 13th Amendment, and then December 24th, 1865, you get the Ku Klux Klan. So that's the timeline up to now. So, Section 1, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for crime whereof the parties shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Amendment Amendment 14, passed by Congress the 13th of June, 1866. So a year later, a year after the Juneteenth Proclamation, right? Ratified July 9th, 1868. So it wasn't ratified till 2 years later. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of this law. Okay, last part, the 15th Amendment. This was passed in Congress February 26, 1869, and it wasn't ratified until February 3rd, 1870, a year later. Section 1. The rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Okay, so that's what I really wanted to go over. I'm kind of done talking. So if we want to actually have a conversation about this before we check out, we totally can. But I think it's super important to kind of refresh everyone's memory. Um, Actually read through these acts that are foundational. People reference the Sheffield Order 15, the Freedmen Bureau, the Freedmen Bank Act. They reference the Reconstruction Acts. It's important that not only that we know them, but they're anchored in our freedmen history, and they're for freedmen. The promised land of 40 acres were for freedmen, and now they're for the descendants of those freedmen. So, A Boogie or Amaru, did y'all want to add to anything before we start wrapping up?
No, I don't have anything to add. Just thank you for reinforcing that baseline information that is important to what we're doing right now. So that's all I really got. Freeman.party.
Yes.
Right, listening. That's it.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir. I definitely appreciate this knowledge that you passed on.
Of course.
And, unfortunately, of course, what I'm saying, nobody's, it's not a whole lot of drama or BS, so, folks is missing out and spreading misinformation, but keep on pushing that. And I like, what I was just sitting there thinking, and I know this is a recorded space, I should probably say what I'm saying, but that entire strip, you feel me?
Mm-hmm.
Whether, areas in this strip, whether occupied or not, hopefully not occupied,
Right.
we probably go up there and set up shop.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of restitution. I mean, our land should be returned to us. And it was very clear about who the sole occupiers and managers of that land would be. And so that's why I think it's so important to read through these things. And even the meeting with Sherman, I mean, out of the 20 freedmen, you had Mr. Lynch, ironically, that was the most off code, right? He didn't agree with us having our own colonies. And then he didn't want to say anything about Sherman, which was kind of funny. But
yeah, that was the guy from Baltimore.
Yeah, and I think he was, if I remember correctly, he was born free too. He was one of the youngest. So I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But Mr. Lynch, I think, is kind of hilarious as his last name is kind of like ironic, right? We've been going through a bunch of lynching since then because of because of that. So, but right, exactly. But to know that 19 out of 20 were on code, that's the type of fortitude we also have to have, and then know that we can't let one person knock us off our square as well, right? And I mean, the most inspiring thing to me when I read through this is the 20 Freedmen's biography. It's like so humbling and so just like heroic, like what they went through. And then for them to be able to like represent for us and like have a clear mind, be able to answer these questions, be articulate, and actually clearly define what we actually need. I mean, it's inspiring. So they left us a great blueprint, and the best thing we can do to honor our ancestors is to fulfill their dreams, right? Is to live out what they laid down. And so, just share with people whenever there's like any confusion about who we are. Remind people of these acts. I mean, 1865 was a hugely important year, right? Um, and not only the acts, but the timeline, the cause and effect of the events, which order they led in, because the order is just as important as the events. It puts things into a hugely important context. To know that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments weren't even ratified when the Freedmen Bureau and Bank Act were signed into law, and that Lincoln was assassinated 5 weeks after the Freedmen Bureau and Bank Act, that lets you know it was about the Freedmen Bank and Bureau Act. It was about freedmen. That's why he was assassinated. He wasn't assassinated for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And even if you want to say the 13th Amendment, there was more than 5 weeks between January 31st, when it was signed into law but not ratified, and when the Freedmen Bureau and Bank Act were signed into law. So they had ample time to assassinate him if that was their goal. The trigger was the 13th, or sorry, was the Freedmen Bureau and Bank Act. So, um, you know, let's remember again our history, where we come from, who we are, and then honor our ancestors by living out the work and the dreams that they laid down the foundation of. So, I mean,
because I know if Special Field Order 15 is written into legislation.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a family that I share a last name with. They still making money off that land over there.
Right.
You know, yeah, South Carolina Freedmen. So
yep.
Yeah, so it was my people. You
exactly.
Know, so it's very personal.
Exactly.
So it's very personal.
And that's your promised land, right? Like this is what we have to understand. Like if other people are willing to talk about their promised land and elevate it to the highest of heights, we have to understand that our promised land is just as valuable. And when we get it and it's restored, like we're going to celebrate these moments just as much as they celebrate their own. And America has gotten away with 400 plus years of genocide, and so not only will our genocide be recognized, no one will be able to deny it. We will have a promised land, and we will know who we are, right? I mean, that's like so fundamental to all of this. So, I'm just looking forward to the moment that this comes. Um, I tweeted out earlier, like knowing and tracing your lineage is just the beginning, right? That's the qualifying mark to then do the work for your ancestors, right? You got to know who your ancestors are to do the work, right? To continue their work, right? And to know what work to continue. So,
yeah, well, anybody who got the same last name as me, this person got 703 acres for a land grant to come over here and have 90 slaves.
Let's go.
So yeah, we know exactly where we from. So
exactly, I love that.
Yeah, man.
And whenever I hear like people talk about like thousands of acres that their family own, or hundreds of acres, I'm always like, damn, we don't even got our 40. Like it just reminds me, I'm like, we have work to do. And I'm glad that we're recovering this knowledge because we have a clear path forward. Obviously, reading through each of those, there's work we have to do to improve them. They weren't perfect, right? The Freedmen Bureau Act was supposed to only exist like a year after the war. And even the Freedmen Bank Act, all of the trustees were non-freedmen, right? And then when the bank failed, they tried to make Frederick Douglass the president of the bank, right? So just understanding the problems and the pitfalls, we can then rewrite the Freedmen's Bureau Act, rewrite the Freedmen Bank Act, make sure that the Freedmen Bureau includes our schools explicitly, the hospitals explicitly, and the courts, right? And then that the bank is made for us. And, I think with that, we have a pretty solid framework. So part of our goal this year, like I said earlier in our last space, we're gonna have our own bill for reparations by the end of the year, our own bill for Freedmen Reconstruction, and our own amendments to Title 18's U.S. Code 1091 genocide prevention, and upgrading that so that it works for us, right?
Definitely looking forward to it.
Definitely.
Yeah. A little bit of good news on my end. I'm setting up to talk with the quote unquote Black Caucus here in my state, so I can drop this OFA.
Hey, I love that.
On the
yes. And sneak in the Freedmen Bank too, right? We need both.
Yes.
So do that spook who sat by the door, Art of War ninja work. But yeah, any last thoughts before we sign out?
Peace, love, reparation, all my freedom.
Yes, 100%.
Peace, love, reparations.
Yes.
Freedmen.party.
Thank you. Yeah, man, we got this, man. Reparations now, Freedmen Reconstruction, genocide prevention. We can't be stopped. All we got to do is put in the work. Only we can stop ourselves. That's what we got to understand. If we let us not do the work, that's the only way we can fail. If we do the work, there's no way we can not succeed. We're on the right path. We just got to keep going. So, with that, I really appreciate y'all. Y'all have a great rest of y'all day, and we'll be back tomorrow, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 Eastern. Signing off. Peace.